Somebody right now may not be in complete isolation, but there are people planning, developing, using this opportunity to figure some things out. Because while everyone else is scurried and trying to keep things the same, because they're not, then someone else has more aware to the opportunity and therefore exploring it. So when you think about awareness, exactly as you said, when you're not aware or you have those blind spots, you're not open to at least evaluating opportunities to learn from someone else or to see what's around you. And in times like this, blind spots cost you money, cost you time, cost you relationships, may cost you election.
Mm-hmm.
No matter what side of the aisle you're on, when you look at how things went down, awareness is important. And I think that's where what you said is very important. But all of us go through those times for good or bad reasons, where we have those blind spots. We just have to be aware that we're going to have them, and we get through it, drive through it faster, or get out of those blind spots.
Welcome to Winning Strategies Playbook, the podcast where we welcome business leaders, CEOs, and industry experts to discuss the rise to the top, building wealth, and real estate insights. Here's your host, Jeremy Spann.
So, Winning Strategies Playbook podcast. Listeners, if you're looking for information on the guests and download the episodes, you can go to myexperiencedrealtor.com, click on podcasts, and you'll be able to find our guests and learn more about them and how to get in touch with them or their businesses. And today's guest is the great Kevin Davis.
Jeremy, good morning.
How are you doing, my friend?
I'm doing good. Good to see you, man.
Yeah, man. I appreciate you coming. So I got to start.
Appreciate you having me.
Oh, yeah. I got to start every one of these off with a joke according to my father-in-law.
Okay. All right.
And actually, it was really funny because I was Googling around for clean NBA jokes, and there really was not that many. And then the ones that there were really long, right? Because you got to put a lot of effort into them. Right. But I did find one. It said, everything's going smooth, ? Right? You must have missed something. And the corporate struggle for perfection. That joke was horrible. Matter of fact, I might just have to key something in later. That one was just
It was a good attempt.
It was right.
It was a good attempt.
And it wasn't from a lack of searching on Google.
No.
Google, you can usually answer everything, right?
I felt the effort.
You felt the effort. So for the listeners out there, I have to really give a proper introduction of Kevin Davis and who he is and what you mean to me is I keep two circles in my life. One of them has my professional sources of wealth manager, CPA, lawyer, private banker, all that good stuff. And then I have my advisory circle, which are 5 people that I unconditionally trust that when I'm trying to figure something out and I need a different perspective that I know will never shoot me the wrong direction, Kevin Davis is one of the Fave 5. As I call it, like the old T-Mobile commercial. Remember that? You call those 5 people for free, and now you just call everybody for free. Right. And so I really appreciate the relationship I've had with you for 8 or 9 years. What do we got? 8 or 9 years?
8. Yeah.
8. About 2012, right?
Yeah,
Sounds about right.
That's right.
Yeah.
Right.
And then my journey to where I came from to where I'm at, and you have played a large part in that. And I got to tell you, I really am grateful for everything.
Oh, they're pretty.
Now, sometimes you see me calling and you're like, I'm going to be on the damn phone for the next 4 hours because he's not going to shut up. And I do think like maybe 2 weeks ago, there was actually close to 4 hours.
3 maybe. But it was a good conversation. We talked about a lot.
Yeah, we did.
We'll talk about some of that today.
Yeah.
But I'll say, well, thanks for the introduction.
Yeah.
But I would say equally, you've had impact on not only my life professionally, personally, but also for our program at TCU, which we'll get into in a little bit. But having someone that has the type of commitment as you, the type of passion, but the support You're a walking billboard. You walk an example of what our program is about. You're a walking example of what could be possible if you give yourself a chance and invest in yourself. So we'll talk about that as well.
Oh, yeah. Well, let's start. Where did the journey begin for Kevin Davis? You grew up in Chicago.
Yeah. Yep.
Which, by the way, and this is for the listeners, I love Chicago.
Right.
And my closest friend I was in the Marines with was from Chicago. So when we first got out of the Marines, I've never told you that?
No.
How do I must talk so much that I miss things. Of course, you never know what's going to come out of my mouth anyways, right? And
no comment.
It kind of like takes me back to whenever we first entered the program and we get the survey for the competencies, and then you have the competence. The 35 competencies are in one of 4 categories. The things you knew you were good at, the things you knew you were not good at, the things that you didn't think you were good at, everybody else thinks you were good at. And then I was really proud of myself, but not everybody thinks so category. And so sitting next to Matt Houston throughout the entire program, and at the time he was president of the Black Chamber of Commerce, and I'm looking at the results, and I said, well, I'm really confused by 2 of these. And he goes, well, which 2? And I said, well, it says my cultural agility is like almost at the complete top, but my cultural sensitivity is almost at the complete bottom, right? And we were, I think, when we got the results, we were in the program by several weeks by then, and we kind of got to know each other. And he goes, oh, yeah. He goes, man, I can help break this down for you. He goes, basically, your cultural agility is you don't see gender, religion, color, nothing. I mean, everybody is exactly the same to you, no matter where they came from, who they are, or anything else. And I was like, well, that sounds like a good thing. And he was like, man, I can tell you, as a black guy growing up in Oak Cliff, I've never met a white guy like you before. And I was like, yay, me. Right. And I said, well, what's the other one? He goes, oh, no, it don't make you, or what did he say? He goes, it doesn't make you any less offensive. He goes, you never know what's going to come out of your mouth. And he goes, a lot of times it's just to see the response on somebody's face.
Right.
And man, Matt was just a good influence on me, because I had Matt on one side, and then I had one of the prettiest human beings on the planet, Mike Field, on the other side of me, right? And so it was great. And then,
that's funny.
And then Matt being over in Dallas, he would come stay with us on the weekends, just so he didn't have to make the drive. And but that was part of the relationships that you got out of this program. Full of executives, but I digress. I could come back to.
We'll get there.
Yeah. You know me trying to keep between the ditches sometimes.
It's okay.
But he, so when we first got out of the Marine Corps, man, and of course this was pre 9/11, flights were like $89 round trip. Right. He would call me on a Friday morning and be like, "Hey, let's go to a Cubs game," and then I would fly out, wouldn't have a bag, anything. We go to the Cubs game, probably to a lot of other establishments. And then the next day, wake up just completely hungover, and he'd drive me to the airport, and I'd fly back wearing the same damn thing that I wore the day before.
Right.
And then we took our daughter to Chicago one year when she was very young, and we went to eat at a place called Pequot's Pizza, which she absolutely fell in love with. And so now, anytime we travel and our daughter's with us, she says, "Can you get a connection flight through Chicago where we'll try to get like a 5-6 hour layover so we can land
and get some pizza.
Jump the train, go get that pizza, and then come back and catch our flight going wherever we're going." So Chicago has always had a special place in my heart, right?
Yeah, no, home is great. I grew up in Chicago.
Yeah.
Was there through after I graduated from undergrad, went back and moved home. Yeah. But my story really is about being only. I grew up only child, so just me and my parents. I have only child. So I was the only person when I went to grad school. I went to University of Illinois for undergrad, then went to Indiana University, the arch enemy, at least in basketball for grad school. And then I was only ethnic minority student that wasn't there on scholarship. So they admitted me based on my credentials, but yet they said, "We don't have any more scholarships available. Would you still come?" And I said, "Yeah, I would." And because I had made a commitment to myself that I would go back to school. Actually, my mom said to me, first question she asked me when I said I got accepted was, how are you going to pay for it? Not congratulations. Not, hey, I'm so happy for you. But how are you going to pay for it? Because she's looking at me like, okay, well, you expect me to do this? You expect your dad to do this? No, or you expect both of us to do something? And I said, I'm going to borrow the money.
Yeah.
And she said, really? I said, yeah. And then I said with such confidence and so quickly, that was the last time we ever talked about it. But that was a commitment I made to myself that that's where I wanted to go. That's what I wanted to do. Then I went to moved to Texas, which we'll get into that. That wasn't in the plan because actually University of Texas was one of the other universities I applied to. And I said, I just can't see myself living in Texas.
Yeah.
And then next thing you know, I had 2 job offers to go from Indiana to Texas. So obviously I came here and worked at Sabre, which was at the time a division of AMR Corporation, the holding company for American Airlines, and worked in travel technology for about 10 years. When I was there, I was ended up being the only African-American executive at a Fortune 500 company at age 34, 35.
That's young.
So, all of a sudden, and I didn't know I was the only one until I walked into a all-hands executive meeting, global meeting at DFW Airport. Now I knew, but I didn't know. So let me put that in context. I knew that the other 2, because there was 3 of us at one point, one passed away, had a heart attack, unfortunately, and the other one took a package and left. So I knew that. But then the visual of walking to the meeting where all the VPs and above were there, and then I looked in the room and I was the only one. Now, growing up only child, being in other situations, I was the only one, being in engineering class at University of Illinois and being the only black guy or black person in the room, I'm used to it, but then that was the time where it hit me a different way because all of a sudden it was a different type of responsibility. I was the one that was carrying the mantle for all the rest of the employees. I was the only one in the room when that was in those discussions. But I was only 34 or 35. So, I'm still young, at least in my career. So that was that. But then at that same time, I was the only guy on my leadership team. So all my direct reports were women. It just kind of worked out that way. And all of a sudden, when I would walk in the room with them, because everyone else didn't look like that, although Sabre was really pretty diverse when it came to gender, but not an entire team, particularly given what we did. Because I also, at that age, had responsibility for $40 million in product investment, which is about 20% of all that was spent annually for that business unit. So I had a lot of responsibility, not only from a business standpoint, but also for what I represented. But then somehow, after being a top performer and all that, then all of a sudden they took my stripes away. All of a sudden I was said, hey, we want to move you into a special project. A special project doesn't always mean you're special.
Right. It's like a broom closet.
Right. Right, exactly, right. It wasn't about performance, more about opportunity where they wanted to move someone else into the opportunity and move me out. But still being only African-American executive, then that may have been the reason why they moved me sideways. But then a year later, they gave me an opportunity to do something else. They said, hey, Kevin, what do you want to do? So I gave them 6 choices. And then they came back with number 7. And number 7 was demotion.
Was a demotion?
A demotion. Never had a bad performance review, nothing of that sort. Always top performer. But yet, that was what was offered. Say, hey, if you move over here, you get sales experience. Well, I said, well, I've been out selling with folks all this time, because none of the salespeople were adept at talking about the product portfolio I managed. So therefore, I had that experience, but yet that's what was offered to me. So the other option was, door number 2 was to lead a company. So took a package and moved on. Around that same time, I had started my own business. So had launched that on the side, had been planning to say, okay, well, I'll do this and work here, but I knew that this was headed in the direction that was leading me out as opposed to in. So it was an option that I created. So that's something else we'll get into a little bit later. But yet, then in leaving Sabre and starting my own business, then one of the first clients I had was working with TCU in the Neeley School of Business. I had targeted business schools as a place to help in my business to help people manage their career and develop their leadership skills. Because again, they may end up being 34, 35 and being the only one in the room, like I was. So therefore, I wanted to give back, but also I saw an opportunity where I enjoyed it. Because while I was at Sabre, one of the things I did well and I really enjoyed is I mentored a lot of the younger professionals that came to the company. Even some people who were even older than me. But yet I was a VP, and they were saying, okay, how do I move up? Sometimes it was a conversation with someone new about where's the bathroom and who should I talk to about this. And then other people was like, okay, I'm ready to make a move and I may lead a company. What do you think I'm going to do? And having that type of conversation. While I was working at Sabre, I found out that people actually got paid to do that as opposed to doing it for free. So when I left, that's what I did. And working with TCU and the School of Business, first started working with full-time MBA students, and then also our PMBA students who are in the evening on career development and leadership development. And then I got a call a year later saying, hey, our EMBA program, this is back in 2007, is about to launch this coaching program where every student will have a coach. So would you be interested? I said, sure. I didn't know much about the EMBA program. I knew about full-time programs, but I didn't know much about the EMBA program. But yet it was TCU, had a good relationship with the folks there, so let me do it. So I embarked upon being a coach in the program back in 2007. Actually, Michael Sherritt was one of the students that I coached back then. And make a long story short, fast forward 2 years later, the then Associate Director of Student Services said, hey, went out to talk to all the coaches, hey, we're looking for someone to help me with recruiting and to bring in new students. Well, it was early 2009. Business had been going well first couple of years, but a little recession happened. So I had a pipeline of business of about $210,000 that was outlined for 2009. Back in September, around Labor Day of 2008, that's what it looked like was going to happen for next year. By January 15th of the following year, it was down to 5. Everything had dried up. So all of a sudden, I get this email saying, hey, we're looking for some help. Do you know anybody? I said, yeah, me. So I put my hat in the ring, and the rest is history. And then on March 15th of 2009, I started working with the TCU Neeley Executive MBA program, doing admissions and recruiting. About a year and a half later, I joined the team full time. In July 1st, 2010. And then probably about a year and a half after that, then I added the additional responsibility of alumni relations. So I help bring in students to the program, and then also the main point of contact with them as alumni. So now, going back to the only being part of my story, I am the only guy on the team. I think we had two student workers back in the day that were guys. No, we talked to everyone. There's the second one. I actually hired him just because of that. But we got along really well, even though he's from St. Louis and like the St. Louis Cardinals. And of course, we got into fights about that. But long and short, we still talk today. But most of my career at TCU, I've been the only guy on the team. So I'm also I'm married with, and I have one child, as I mentioned before. She's a daughter. So I'm the only guy at home. On Thanksgiving and holidays, when mom and my mother-in-law and my sister-in-law shows up, I'm still the only guy because my dad passed away many years ago. So I'm used to being only. So that's part of my story.
Well, and it's one of the things I love about doing this series is people that I thought I really, really knew, I learned something new about. And
Right.
And hearing only actually makes sense to me now of why from the very first time you and I met, when you were giving me the tour around the campus program, and I was like, man, and for me, it's just like there's always something about a little bit of a gut feel, right?
Mm.
You meet someone and you're like, hey, I'm supposed to be connected with this person.
Mm.
And that explains it. Now, after all these years, almost a decade later, it's like, oh, now I understand why I depend on you for your perspective. Because
Right.
you see things, being, like you said, the only person in that room. And then naturally that gives you a perspective towards things,
Right.
right? But you said a word earlier that I think absolutely 100% defines you. My perspective of you is commitment.
Okay.
I mean, that is, you're one of the most committed people I know. And I have a huge amount of respect for people that are committed to things, especially when the universe is not cooperating. Right. And, and an unpopular topic that a lot of people don't want to talk about, especially with all the turbulence going on in this country right now, is that there are some realities, right? And being an African-American, being an African-American male in this country, sometimes people forget that there's things don't always go the same way as everybody else. Right. And one of the things I've always loved about our relationship is that you and I can speak openly about stuff, right? We have such an amount of respect for each other that we can say things. We may not always agree on stuff, but we can always talk about those things. So as you were making your journey through and then looking around, like in that moment going, man, I'm the only black dude here. Like what kind of goes through your mind at that point when it really kind of, like you said, you knew it, but it didn't really hit you for some time. And then in that moment, you're like, whoa, this is a reality.
Yeah. A couple things. One, you get used to it, which is not a good thing. I think some of us get some people who are the only woman, the only African-American, the oldest guy, the oldest person, whatever. Being the one, because being only also means you're the one. So depending upon your perspective on it, you may say, okay, this is great. But then you have to ask yourself, by being the only one in the room with that perspective, can you meet the objectives of the group as a whole by yourself? If you can, then being the only one is okay. In most cases, being the only one does not position you to be as effective to reach the objective of the group. So when I started my business, even when I was mentoring folks when I was working at Sabre, I had a diverse group of folks. It was male, female, African-American, Caucasian, Asian, younger, older, it didn't matter. Because to me, I think it's not just about black and white, it's about appreciating differences. Because if everyone's the same, actually I have these moments when I think about if there was no problems in the world, how would it be? Pretty boring, to be honest. If there's nothing to fix, if there's no challenge, I think the suicide rate would probably go up. Because, because you there's no struggle. I mean, it's a part of being human is to have a struggle, but the part of the struggle can be managed appropriately if we just accept people for who they are. That should not, there's enough struggle. I mean, you have disease, you have health, whatever, natural disasters. It's enough other stuff that we don't control, but yet we can control how we approach different. Doesn't mean you have to agree, just like you just said. But yet doesn't mean that you have to be with each other if you disagree. Doesn't mean that. But yet appreciation of the other side or the alternatives, I think would help us a great deal. So in that moment, there's a sense of, okay, here we go again. The other part is a responsibility. Okay, if I'm the only one, then I have to represent. Then that can go one of two ways. You can be emboldened and you take it on and you represent well, or you put too much pressure on yourself and you may not show up as well because you put too much pressure on yourself. Pressure could lead to you not saying what you need to say, not doing what you need to do, or you may say too much or try and do too much or assume that someone else has bad intentions when they really don't, because they may not just be aware. So I think responsibility is another thing that comes to mind. And I would say when you have a story of only, then now going back to here you go again, then you have that sense of, okay, what do I do first? I remember distinctly, I was 6, 7 maybe. It was 2 brothers down the street. Won't name them. I had a new softball my dad bought, and was playing softball in front of the house. 16-inch, things you do in Chicago, 16-inch softball. We don't do that down here. And they said, hey, can we hold on to the ball till tomorrow? I said, no. To both of them. And then they said, no, man, we'll hold on to it and then we'll give it back. And I said, no. So I ended up having to fight both of them for softball because I'd much rather fight them than my dad because I was going to lose that. Right. So I'll come home with the softball and a problem. So I think put that in the context that being okay with being only, being okay to stand to be different, being okay to stand in your own on your own space. Too often, it's easy to just say, I'm just going to blend in or assimilate or just agree, which kind of correlates with the first 1 and 2 because, those are kind of byproduct of that. But you have to be comfortable with being only, but not so comfortable that you just stay that way and keep it status quo. So that's the type of things that go through my mind. In some cases, only is just, it is what it is. I mean, there's not another guy walking in my house anytime soon.
Right. being a father of an only child who's a daughter.
Right.
I understand. And when that moment comes, that one does.
Right.
One of your good old buddies, me.
Right.
I'm pretty sure I'm going to get a phone call and be like, hey, man, it's 2 o'clock in the morning. I need some body bags, shovels, lanterns, 12-pack of beer, and no questions. I'll be like, on my way.
Right.
I know. I've been there.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, so sometimes, you got to accept it. Yeah. And it is what it is. But when you talk about in business or you're talking about in community, what have you, and you're the only, you have to be comfortable with it in the moment such that you can be effective in making sure that you're not the only forever. So, yeah.
And another word that you dropped, which I thought was pretty amazing because this is what you helped me learn was awareness, right? Is I never forget, you're like, hey, and Dr. Rhodes had talked about it when you're in there, right? Of like, hey, be aware, right? And I don't think I really truly, I don't even know if I knew what the definition of that word was prior to in the program. And what I've always loved about you is you'll have a real conversation with me even when it's unpopular. Like, hey, man, you're wanting to try to accomplish this, but what you're doing right now is like going the opposite direction. Mm-hmm. And to me, that's what a true friend does. Right. They don't tell you what you want to hear. They tell you what you need to hear. And it was funny. I was thinking about this the other day. Is what I had to teach myself to do during the program. So for the listeners out there, the program really, your evaluation is based on 3 things. You have your group, you have your team, right? Then you have the academia portion of it, and then you have your the classroom contributing to the conversation. But when you got 27 people in there that have 27 different opinions, some may not speak up and some may speak too much. Well, we know what category I was in, where speaking too much might have, if you stopped, might have given that opportunity for the person that finally had the confidence enough to say something, be able to offer that opportunity. Right. And as I learned through that, what I had to do is I had to sit on my hands because I talk with my hands. I'm a hand talker, right? So I finally determined, I was like, I was like, well, if my hands can't move, then I can't talk, right? And it's so, but that was something that was really important to learn, that even 2 years ago when I got an executive coach, it was, I need to learn more about self-awareness. I mean, I've gotten this part, but I need more. And that was really important because it helped me shut up long enough to actually hear what the other person was saying. Right. And then my world was really opened up to, wow, that was pretty impactful. Or, wow, that was really horrible, right? Yeah. Or, what did you do? Tell me more about that. And so you played a very strong part in that journey to be self-aware, which I still have many, many more miles to
we
go,
all do,
right?
Well, we all do. I mean, we all have moments of blind spots.
Yeah.
Even when you're driving, you have blind spots. Some are because you're not looking, and some is because it's just a blind spot. It's just a spot where you just can't see, and you got hope in that moment that you get through that blind spot sooner as opposed to later, such that you can get full vision. I think that applies in life, but definitely in business. You can be so successful that you are blind to the fact that there's somebody in the garage doing something that's going to take you down or compete with you in a few years or a few months. I thought about when thinking about our current state of affairs, even early in the pandemic months. I forget what I was watching on TV. They talk about back when there was the bubonic plague in Europe. And that's when Sir Isaac Newton, if I'm not mistaken, went in isolation for 2 years. And then he came out with calculus and a whole lot of other things that we still use today, the laws of gravity and all that, if I recall the story correctly. Somebody right now may not be in complete isolation, but there are people planning, developing, using this opportunity to figure some things out. Because while everyone else is scurried and trying to keep things the same, because they're not, then someone else has more aware to the opportunity and therefore exploring it. So when you think about awareness, exactly as you said, when you're not aware or you have those blind spots, you're not open to at least evaluating opportunities to learn from someone else or to see what's around you. And in times like this, blind spots cost you money, cost you time, cost you relationships, may cost you election.
Mm-hmm.
No matter what side of the aisle you're on, when you look at how things went down, awareness is important. And I think that's where what you said is very important. But all of us go through those times for good or bad reasons, where we have those blind spots. We just have to be aware that we're going to have them, and we get through it, drive through it faster, or get out of those blind spots as quickly as we can.
So let me ask you a question, and this may be a landmine question.
Sure, no problem.
So naturally, I'm never going to know what it's like to see the world through the eyes of being a black male.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's obvious, I'm not a black male. I didn't grow up under the same conditions or anything else.
Right.
But I did grow up under some conditions, right?
Mm-hmm.
Dropping out of high school, going in the Marines. By the way, if you want to piss off your United States Marine Corps recruiter, tell them that you're not going to graduate, and that will make them less than entertained.
Mm-hmm.
Then going in the Marine Corps, learning, dyslexia, nobody really knew what that was back in the 80s,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so I just naturally thought I was dumb, which I've never had a self-confidence issue, right? I've always been full of confidence. I just thought, hey, I was born. This is just not making sense, right?
Mm-hmm.
Then I learned later in life, like when I got to the Marine Corps, I was like, hey, wait a minute. your brain processes things different. This is how you read. And then learning to read, be like, wow, this opened up a whole new spectrum.
Mm-hmm.
And then getting out, going to the police department, putting myself through junior college, working 10-hour night shifts as a cop, and then going to school all day, and then getting into programs, the Student Government Association, Phi Theta Kappa, all these different programs, building that academic resume, where TCU then offered me a full academic scholarship, where, I really felt like I had done everything possible to earn that scholarship. Then getting there, right? Then ultimately thinking I was going to graduate in May of 2006, but my advisor thought that I fell under the program of a traditional student, but the year I transferred in, they had added 18 credit hours to the program that, unbeknownst to me, was like, no, you're 18 hours shy. And it was like, oh man, what do I do? And so then Mike Scott, who was over the finance department, going to him, and he's like, hey, yeah, that was our bad that was missed. We're going to need you to continue, but we're going to pay for a summer class, and we're going to pay for the fall class to extend scholarship.
No, Mike's don't want to.
Oh yeah, that's actually how I learned.
That's right. Yeah, Mike told you. That's right. I forgot about that. I forgot about that.
He had told me, he said, when you're ready, you need to come back here And I was like, bro, you just told me I got to do another half year. I'm not ever thinking about school ever again. Are you kidding me?
Right.
And so, but he was like,
right.
no, there's going to be a moment where you're going to want, he goes, look, getting to know you over the last couple of years, he goes, you're going to want more. And he goes, and I'm telling you, you need to come back and do the executive MBA program.
That was good advice.
Yeah. Cause he was,
I remember that.
not only did he put the bug in my ear, but he was one of my referrals.
Right, that's right.
Going into the program.
Sure was. That's right.
And so, but point being is, I felt like based on certain conditions, I had this uphill battle that I fought for, and I was committed, right? Is if someone is born in this country and they don't come from money and they come from somewhere where you're not a white male, can they also do the same things? It's just going to be a lot more work than maybe somebody else. And I know that's a landmine.
No. Well, I'll say this much: the simple answer is yes.
Yeah.
But the real question is why, right? Why is that? Why would it be more difficult? Why would it be more arduous? Now, even within the African American community, it would be for someone with my upbringing with two parents, both working together until my dad passed away, versus someone, no matter how much money they had, that parents was divorced or separated. That's a different challenge, but it's still a challenge. Is that a challenge that someone who is not African American has? Yeah, that happens too in other communities too. So there's similarities that still there are other things that are obstacles that are shared no matter what background or what ethnicity you are. But then you say, well, okay, if that's the case, then why is this other part? And it goes back to what I was saying before about differences. But also it comes back to about power. So if people perceive that something that is different than themselves or different than what they think is the standard cannot ascend to a certain position or level, then that's what keeps some other people down or back. I think that the difficulty is getting enough examples, and you don't get enough examples of people being successful if you don't have opportunity. So to me, it's more about, can someone get there? Sure, because everybody's capable, given similar opportunities. So to me, I think it's more about that awareness word again.
Yeah.
Because I think for a lot of people who come from diverse backgrounds, whether it be African American, Asian, or anything that's not Caucasian man, how many examples do you have of people who've made it and that you know and touch, not just read about? Something that's on TV every day, something that's in the books every day, something that's in the classroom as a guest speaker, even someone who's coming back, alum coming back to visit, wherever, all the above. How many examples do you see? When you read the business books, do you see your face or your story in the story of how business is done? If the answer is no, then psychologically, you may not see yourself making it, no matter, even if you do have the opportunity. So I think the question is more why as opposed to if. Because it's definitely clear that it's possible because many people have done it.
Mm-hmm.
In comparison to other populations, maybe not as much, but didn't say why. And I come back to as earlier this year when everybody wanted to talk and have these deep conversations after everybody saw what happened on TV back in late May, when that's been happening for as long as the country's been around, but yet it was on TV and everybody was sitting at home, so they saw it. So therefore, now all of a sudden we want to talk about it. All right, great. To me, to combat that in terms of what, especially in the education world, to combat what we saw is you have to build awareness. For example, going back to the question came, what can we change in the program or in the business school in order to address these issues? The first thought was scholarships, and we need to do this. I said, okay, well, let's leave the money the same. Let's just have business cases that have diverse actors or protagonists. So let's have, like the case you guys covered that talked about the Asian beer company. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. That's great. So all of a sudden it's about totally different place, different part of the world. Well, how many business cases do we have or do we want to have that covers different people. Having guest speakers come in from different backgrounds, male, female, all different backgrounds. So I think something that simple. He said, well, why is that simple? I said, well, for me, when I was in business school, every time I went to the student lounge, because we didn't check email per se as much then, we just went to the folder and got the piece of paper. As I had to walk down the hallway, there was this wall of fame of all these esteemed alumni. You know, there's 3 African American men on the wall. So some days I would just stop and just look out. And I'm thinking, well, okay, how'd they get on the wall? Then I would advance to, well, how can I get on the wall? And then I met them because they came back to campus. So they were real, tangible people then. And they shared their story. And whether they did anything more than that or not, that was important because it said, okay, this is real. This is possible. And I'm in the place where they were. And then, hey, this could happen for me. We need more of that. And to me, it's more of making sure that you have awareness, to the point again, and get people, in that way, people will seek the opportunities because the opportunities are there. Will it be still more difficult because people don't value differences as much? Sure. But, this person's from the north, this person's from the south, this person's from Dallas versus Fort Worth. I mean, it always will be something. So therefore, but we find ways to overcome those. So you just have to find a way to overcome that, in my opinion. But still, it comes back to respecting differences, but also creating those opportunities for people to be more aware of what could be possible. Not only the people who are directly impacted, but also the people who are in the majority.
Yeah, and so, like for me, my journey growing up, like Burleson in the 80s, 0 black folks, right?
Mm-hmm.
Racism was prevalent, right? Grew up in an environment, just not knowing any better. And then you go in the Marine Corps where all kinds of differences, right?
Exactly.
And
right.
And I think the Marine Corps was really, really good for me. You know, look, I'll say this on this podcast, and man, I get a little goosebumps doing it because it's one thing whenever you say something and the words actually go out.
Right.
I wasn't a racist, but I definitely had some stereotypes because I did not have any exposure, right? And then I go in the Marine Corps, and it didn't matter if you were black, white, brown, male, female, you were all getting treated the same way, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that was eye-opening for me because I don't think I'd ever had a conversation with a black person ever in my life because of access, right?
Mm-hmm.
Just there weren't any black people in Burleson.
Opportunity.
Right? And now I get here, and the one thing that we shared was misery. Matter of fact, I think I sent it to you a couple of years ago. There was a meme, and it was an Air Force general that said, well, the reason the Marines are the Marines is because they treat, no matter what color you are, they treat everybody like they're black, right? and you couldn't help but laugh at it. You're like, and if people can't find humor in funny little things like this, then they're taking themselves way too serious, right? But at that point, I was like, hey, wait a minute. I entered an environment where there's all kinds of different people, Asians, Mexicans, Puerto Ricans, black, you name it. Right. But we had that shared misery. And by the way, we were forced to work as a team.
Right.
And so at that point, and it was funny, the thing the Marine Corps that pushed is you're not black, you're not white, you're not anything, you're green. And so, but it was really funny because there's one concept that you're like, yes, in my soul, I'm green, but on the outside shell, we're all different colors. But because of that, in that teamwork and being able to, willing to sign your life away to go do things together to protect this country was probably the best place I could have gone from growing up in a small town to there. Because it opened my eyes. And what it did is part of awareness is curiosity, right? As I became curious about people. Like I just wanted to learn, like, hey, why was your life different than mine? And it was funny because we had this one dude in boot camp whose parents were like incredibly wealthy. We were like, why? The rest of us are here because we're broke. I mean, the one thing we all shared is that when you go look for enlisted folks, right? They didn't come from 76109, right?
Yeah, that's right.
And so we were like, why? Like, what? You could have gone to college, right? Like, this is not like college wasn't even an opportunity for us. Like, wasn't going to happen. And he was just like, and he said, well, part of it was I wanted to piss my parents off, And he goes, but the other part is he goes, I grew up in a life of privilege, and I saw that, and I wanted to experience something different.
Right.
So it was like, man, and I'll never forget. And I wish I could remember this guy's name. I mean, we're talking, this is 3 decades ago in boot camp.
Right.
If I saw his picture, I'd be like, oh, that's the guy.
Right.
But it was, then I was like, okay, I'm curious about humans. I'm just curious about people. Like, what makes them tick? Why do they do the things they do? Why? Does that make sense?
It does, because I was fortunate that despite growing up in a predominantly African-American community, our neighbors in the house next door to us was 2 elderly white couple, the Hanners. My dad had a great relationship with Mr. Hanner. He took time to work with my dad on, here's what I'm doing with my lawn, here's how I keep this going in the house. And my dad, and they had a good relationship till he passed away, and then they moved, and Mr. and Mrs. Hanner moved out. Similarly, the grade school I went to, Sister Catherine, Caucasian nun, great woman. She made sure that we celebrated Black History Month, and we did more then, and I learned so much about myself and my history because of someone who didn't look like me. Father Heinz, who became the pastor many years after I first started there and was our coach of our flag football team, because we didn't have money for pads up north. He, again, Caucasian man, treated us all like his sons, was a member of the community, just another guy. But even more so than that, going back to my dad had a diverse set of friends. Latino, Caucasian. He worked with a diverse set of people at work. When he worked at Sears, he talked to anybody. He worked in Chicago Bridge and Iron as well. Had a diverse group of friends. So that's what I knew. Despite growing up in a Black neighborhood and having pretty much a very homogeneous family, because of my parents, because even my mom worked for State of Illinois, Children and Family Services, and diverse set of people there that she dealt with. That's what I grew up seeing. So after grade school, going to high school, I went to De La Salle Institute, which is, if you want to be mayor and you want to be mayor of Chicago, used to be that you go to De La Salle. The Dailies went there, the Ryans, Dan Ryan Expressway, Blandick went to De La Salle. I think it was up until when Jane Byrne was mayor. We had a long stretch because Daly was mayor for a long time. Anyway, long and short of it, that was a minority. So in high school, I felt, I saw division. But also saw when things worked out well when we came together. So, I was in the honors class, and we was, pretty much half and half in the room, and we were brothers. We went to school together, every class almost for 4 years, the same group pretty much. And we knew each other really well. And that was, different. So I learned that early age. And so that's where, when you have a person who grew up in the South Side of Chicago, all of a sudden is transplanted in Texas, and then is at TCU with a 214 phone number on the cell phone, calling folks saying, hey, you want to drop $100,000 to come back to school? Didn't feel that strange to me. But I knew that, I'm definitely different than the majority of the people that I'm calling on, at least initially. But at the same time, I have to take the time to find the connection. They're calling us, or I'm calling them for a reason. If it has a connection like we have, then we'll continue the conversation. We'll continue to have a relationship. If the relationship leads to them coming to the program, great. But yet we have to get beyond just how we look and then more about the other things that makes us human that we may have in common. Because that's what my dad and my mom did growing up. That's what Sister Catherine did. That's what Father Heinz did. That's what I grew up seeing from those adults. And I think going back to what we were talking about before, more of us adults need to be doing that. Doesn't mean we have to agree, but yet we have to show that, hey, you know, we can get together and talk and do certain things. We can hang out, you know. The couple and daughter who we keep in touch with much from preschool, from when the daughter was in preschool, are Caucasian. We hang out, talk all the time. Only people we hung out with primarily in the pandemic were them. Why? Because we have something in common. They're good people. Our daughters are born on a day apart.
Wow.
You know, the only sleepover she's gone to was with her at their house. You know, that's the type of thing that is shows a connection. You know, and that's where it's more about the commonality as opposed to what you see. You know, if you think about any sport, any team, or like you said in the military, if you start looking at how you look and you know who's tall, who's short, and all that, then you already lost because you got to figure out what everyone does well, how they fit, and then how you can move forward to a common objective. And I think that's what you teach in business school. But yet, when you talk about in life, you know, this should apply the same way. So, and that's where we hit it off. I mean, I remember distinctly, I told you this recently, that when you came out to the first preview luncheon and then you called me afterwards and said, hey, I'm not going to do it this year, but I'm definitely going to be one of your first the next year because I got a case I'm working on right now. I'm not going to be able to manage the time, got things going on. And then I told our then executive director, Nancy Nix, the conversation and said, well, do you think he's coming back? Oh, no, he'll be back. So what do you mean? I said, well, one, based on me just talking to him, I felt the sincerity. Two, he had that look in his eye that this is the place I want to be. And three, when you send me the picture of what you look like, which doesn't look too much different than what you look like now, or when you're undercover, then I said, okay, well, he's telling the truth. He does have something going on. But my point is that, again, it was more about a connection about who you are as opposed to what I saw.
Yeah. And
that in itself is, I think, one of the things that you get out of the program. When I think about your class, I think about diversity in just your class. I mean, you know, we had police officers. We have a community leader, too, as a matter of fact. We had someone who works for the FAA, air traffic control. We have someone who's a part of a family of legacy and ascending to the highest ranks of his company, of his family's company. You got multiple people climb the corporate ladder. You got people who are single, people who are married, people who are divorced, people with kids, people without kids, serial entrepreneurs. And that's only within 27 people. Mm-hmm. You know, the differences that was there, but then the connection that was developed amongst such a diverse group is unspeakable. It's unfathomable going in. That's why I don't try and sell that myself. I have prospective students talk to people like yourself because it will sound fabricated by me. That didn't happen. And then they meet the person or the people, and then they tell the story. So, wow, that actually happened. I think of two of your classmates, Kim and Jamie, who both single moms at the time. And I introduced them to April Harris, who's a single mom, who went through the program 2 years prior. And they met at a preview luncheon, and they hit it off. Fast forward, and then when in the first semester program, when Kim was diagnosed with cancer, and the person who was at her side, as much as her family, was this person's just met a few months before, Jamie. So you say, well, I go to business school to get an MBA. Yeah, but then you may find a lifelong friend. You may find a relationship that goes beyond just that you need in a time of real need. Now, of course, as you know, Kim went on to not miss a class weekend thanks to the Ice Armageddon of December 2013.
Oh, yeah. I remember well.
And then when she came back, all of us had pink on just to welcome her back.
Yep.
So again, people who had differences, all of a sudden, because of this compelling event, we came together.
Yeah.
To support someone. And then she turns around and says, okay, I'm going to keep going. And she ends up being class valedictorian, outstanding class member, voted on by her classmates and the faculty.
Yeah.
No, 4-0. You know, that's the type of person that you meet in an EMBA program. Because like yourself, people may think, okay, Jeremy's just wild. Well, there's a lot of other wild people that go through an EMBA program. I mean, all right, I'm already making 6 figures. I got a family. I maybe take care of my parents. I got my other stuff I got going on. I'm going to add an 18-month program on top of that. And by the way, the last time I went to school, I was happy to leave. I did okay. I mean, I do have evidence that I did finish, but yet at the same time, it wasn't the last place someone probably told me that, you didn't do too well, was probably when you was in school. Not at work, because at work, you're a top performer, you're a high achiever, you're it. No one's told you that your stuff stink in a long time, except for when you was back at that university. But yet you're going to choose to go back. Some people may call that crazy. I call it the right thing to do. Why? Because how often do we get a chance to invest in ourselves? Putting some money down, going back to what I said about myself at age 24 or 5 when I made that decision to go back to school. And my mom asked me how I was going to pay for it. I made a decision. I'm going to borrow it. Now, I was young and stupid. I know I was going to pay it back, but hey, I drank the Kool-Aid. I go to school, I go out, get a job, and I'll be making more than I'm making today. Now, luckily, I wasn't making that much as a sports statistician back then, so anything was more than that. So, but long and short of it, though, I placed that bet. And then when I found that no one else was placing that type of bet that looked like me in the program, then again, I was only one. So when I talk to people about, because most of our students are just that, they're paying their own way. They're taking a student loan. They may take a home equity loan. They may borrow money from family. They may take out money from their retirement. Most of the time, it's not the company paying it. So this is a bet. This is an investment, but it's in the person in the mirror. Again, if you're not willing to do that for yourself, why should your boss give you a raise? Why should your investor put money in your business or your idea? If you're not willing to put some equity in yourself or your own dream, then you're not in a position to ask someone else, or not a stronger position to ask for someone else. So given that was my experience, that I did that for myself, I'm pretty passionate when I talk to people about, hey, this is what you can do. And you know what? If you trying to figure out where your money went, all you have to do is look in the mirror every morning. You don't have to worry. It's not like giving money at church. Did that go to the building fund or not? No, this is you. This costs a lot of money. Yeah, I know. The only thing you probably own that costs more is a house. But hurricane, tornado, rainstorm, whatever, a fire can come, that house is gone. You still have MBA though. You still can create that opportunity. You still have those relationships. You still have that knowledge. You still have that method for learning and growing. You have that confidence that I can take in information in a few hours and then turn it into something. That's what our students do. So to me, that's that. When I think about EMBA candidate, when I think about people like yourself, when I think about your class, having the diversity of thought and people in a room, having that option or ability to be in a room like that at a time in your career, in your life, where having that expansion of your network and that diversity of your network can only turn into greater dividends, why wouldn't you do that? Okay, you got a special assignment, you got to do it. Okay, but don't keep telling yourself no. Because if you tell yourself no once, Easy to do it again. And when people say, well, most of the time when they ask, will they come back? I said, no, they're not. Why? I said, they told themselves no for a reason that is not going to change from year to year. There's no end to, like for example, somebody reached out to us, said, I'm not sure if I can do this right now. Why? My daughter's going to school, going to college. Well, they knew that before they called me, right? Mm-hmm. So what changed? What is it that you need in order to take that next step? And that's why in the program we talk about, as in the conversations and also as we go through, what is your objective? What are you trying to achieve? Are you an entrepreneur trying to grow your business? Are you a high potential leader on the fast track to the C-suite? Are you already executive and you're just trying to double down and expand your horizons and your knowledge base? Are you making a pivot mid-career for a different industry or like you did? Or are you trying to get through that barrier in advance and you think this will be what's going to get you there? Based upon those 5 different objectives, then we will work with you differently throughout the program. And whether it be from the time we first talk to the time you're in the program, also as things change after you graduate, because that's really is what this is about. It is truly about reaching those objectives. It's not just about a degree. If you want a degree, it's a whole lot of cheaper places to go. But yet, if it's really about who can help me reach these objectives, even the ones and reach certain heights that I didn't even know was even in my forecast, then that's what we're here for. And that's where I think affording yourself the opportunity to be in that diversity or that room and being open. Because I think it all is connected, Jeremy, that when you're more aware and you're open, then more opportunities come your way. One of those opportunities, at least that we both share, is the EMBA program. And it's an opportunity to be exposed to something that you didn't know before. Whether it be, when we're not in a global pandemic, traveling abroad for 2 weeks, whether it be on a team of people who do completely different things than you, and all of a sudden you have to come together to form a team and to do projects together. All that is just, you just don't get that opportunity that often.
Yeah. And that's, man, one of the things that I would say really stuck out to me that I think that this country is, like you said, as adults, we should be doing more of is, I mean, at first like when we did the in residence part, right? And you meet your classmates and I'm looking around like, oh, wow, you're VP at Bell and you're VP at BNSF and you own a company and you got this and that. And I was like, I'm a cop.
Right.
And in the beginning, that's exactly what I saw was the differences.
Right.
But then and I would say it was really on that first team because I had Glenn Isbell, right? That dude's got like a 50-pound brain. Like he solves E equals MC squared, had sex with the square root of .com, and this is what it is. This is amazing. I mean, that dude, like it's just his mind is the flux capacitor, right? And so, but what I started to see on our first team, because I had Shannon, Jason, Glenn, and Derek. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. 4 other completely different personalities, 4 completely different industries. Everybody's super successful. And one of the things that started to happen was a lot like in Marine Corps is you started seeing how much more we actually had in common than not. And so like in this country, I think that's what everybody's so focused on the differences that they forget that actually we don't really have a few differences.
Right.
We got a lot more in common than we have in differences, but people are focused on the differences.
That's right.
And I'll never forget when we were walking around and we are here to develop strategic leaders. And I didn't really know what that meant at the time, but what I did know was I am a leader. If I wasn't a leader, I wouldn't be here, but I'm not the leader that I want to be. And it's because of there are certain limitations. You know what you know, you don't know what you don't know, right? There are certain limitations that you get to that you have to get that exposure.
Right.
And our class was exactly that. And like you said, with Kim, man, at that point, nobody quitting, right?
That's right.
Because at that point, you're like, here's a single mom of two, an executive with the highest GPA and fighting cancer and all of this. There ain't nobody quitting. And and it was funny because, we a couple months prior to that, we did have somebody quit, right? And I was really disappointed because it's a fellow veteran. And I was like, I was really, really annoyed by that. And then someone else that ended up becoming really good friends had tried to leave and had already moved. And I called him and said, you're coming back.
Right,
I was like, she can do it. You can do it.
Right.
And he was glad that he did. And so it was, there was just so many of these components that at that point, my limitations were not as much exposure to business. And now I had this encyclopedia of different industries. And that's one of the special parts of the program that I tell folks is, look, you're going to get exposure to so many different types of industries. And whatever problem you have, at least one person in there has gone through that same problem. And I mean, I've called Brandon, I've called Glenn, I've called Shannon, I've called probably about almost everybody except for one. In our class to say,
leave him alone, man. Leave him alone.
Yeah, I'll leave that one.
But let's talk about that for a second. Let's talk about it for a second, without naming names.
Yeah.
Appreciate the differences.
Yeah.
That one person in your class was carrying a different burden that he never talked about because he was proud not to talk about it. I knew about it. And if he had opened himself up, he would have gotten more help. If he had so he robbed himself of an opportunity to get even more out of it than he did. Now he got what he wanted. He got new gig, better gig, different place, all that. He got that.
Yeah.
But he could have got that much more. But pride got in the way, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And that, that happens, any group of people.
Right.
And that's and same thing for the person who left. Pride got in the way because of whatever reason.
Yeah.
And I think that's unfortunate when we see that. Now, conversely, though, going back to what you said about, I'm a cop. We didn't see you as a cop.
Yeah.
You were a business owner. And when you became more and more clear to you that that's what you are, then that's when all of a sudden the light bulbs came on. Because as your listeners may know, you own your own pizza joint, and still do. And so to us, let's say, wait a minute, he's TCU undergrad, Marine veteran, sergeant in the Fort Worth PD, and he owns his own business. Okay, wait a minute. That combination isn't rare. This is a different cat. He may not know it yet, but he knows enough that he's knocking on the door and saying, hey, I want more. Let's give him a shot. And that's what we did because that's what we saw.
Yeah.
Now, what we know for a fact is that there's at least 50% of every cohort, if not maybe sometimes 2/3, what we see may not be what they see just yet. Even though they wrote the essays, even though they uttered the words to us when we did the interview, they may not see that just yet. But when we watch students go through the program, and these are adults, these are grown men and women, these are not little kids we're talking about. We're talking about average age 38 to 40, 17 years of work experience, 10 years in management on average. So, and across all sectors, like you said. But when we see someone at that stage in life develop and grow as if they went from crawling to walking to running over a couple of months, that's just so rewarding. I mean, it puts a smile on our face. Before I came here, I sent the email to the team and to our marketing agency about the CEO of an oil and gas company locally who is in the Dallas Business Journal today. So I said, oh, frog in the news. As we talk about frog on the move, we got frog in the news. So every time there's a frog on the move or in the news, and it's an E&B alum, it's like a mini celebration inside.
Yeah.
Because that is, that means that person is getting that return. And that is great. And we want to be a part of that, so we promote it. Hey, look, not because we're trying to attract new people, although that's part of it, but it's because, hey, that's a member of our family doing well. We want to tell everybody about it.
Yeah.
And that's just great. But that's why that hit me when you said that. Now, oh, I'm a cop.
Yeah.
No, you're a business owner. You also happen to have a job with Forward PD. And as you went further and further through the program, particularly I remember when you're back and forth with Mo.
I don't think anybody ever wanted to hear about pizza ever again.
Right. But that's when I saw that the change was really happening then, because he was asking these questions like, wait a minute, so if I do this and I do that, it's okay. And then you did it and you came back, you say, hey, I tried this and this worked. And then you asked for more. And now it was not more of, I'm just trying to get a grade. It was more of, I'm learning stuff that I can turn around on Monday or even that night to get a return on investment.
Yeah.
And it was just great to watch. I'm in the classroom because I'm bringing other, back then when we had visitors on campus, I'm bringing in people to watch and view class, and I'm watching what people develop and grow.
Mo throwing darts at me.
Yeah, right. But the back and forth, and most of the time, helped everyone else, because you were asking questions and somebody else was like, hey, I was wondering that too.
Yeah.
But then before I think right after class was over, then we had a networking event at Old School Pizza.
Yeah.
And with the whole class, and Mo came, which is great. So he could start seeing some of the things that you were talking about you were doing. It was just, that was even before you graduated. That was before you went on to study abroad. And that's where you think about that return on investment. We talk about class on Friday, return on investment on Monday. Those are examples that you see. When people say, what's the difference between a full-time MBA program and an EMBA program? That's one of them. Not only who's in the room, who's in the class, the cohort, the people that are experienced professionals, executives, leaders, business owners, and community leaders, but also the fact that you don't have to wait a few years before you can actually do what you read about in the business case. You can, because of who you are and where you are in your career and who you're in the room with, you can do that tomorrow. You may, after class, go talk about over beers or talk about over dinner, and the next thing you know, you have someone on the back of a napkin and you're moving forward with it. Like, Opie and Mike, as you mentioned before, did along with Kevin and Dustin. That happens, and that's where you see that. You say, okay, that's the difference. Full-time MBA, I read about CEOs and all that, and then, I wasn't executive until 5 years later. But most of us are not there at that point. So you're not even in a position to do a lot of things you learn. Whereas in the MBA program, you can, I remember one of our alums say every Monday, or a few of them said this, every Monday I used to wear my team out. I come back from class. I say, hey, we need to do this, this, and this, because I learned this, and I talked to this person. That just be excited. And the team like, okay. It's like, and sometimes they'd be excited to hear what I had to say. Other times like, okay, more work is coming. But the thing is that you have the opportunity because of who you are and where you are and who you're in the room with to take it and run with it faster.
Man, when you talk about light bulb moments, because one of the things I've never been afraid to do is ask questions, whether it was, and maybe that's a part of being a Marine and being a cop, I wasn't afraid to ask questions, even when it was the difficult questions, right? Because I was hungry to learn. And then then what happened is, so for the audience out there, is when I went to do the executive MBA, was not because I had any intentions on leaving the department.
Right, exactly. Right.
But eventually, and this is not meant to be an insult, and it is absolutely not. But the PD wasn't enough for me at that point.
Right.
That changed. When that light bulb switched, is I can't stay in the industry I'm in, because it's now I've unlocked how hungry I really am.
Because you didn't see yourself as a police officer anymore. You saw yourself more as a business owner. Doesn't mean you couldn't be and that you weren't a really good one. It's just that I see something else that whets my appetite more, utilizes my skills and my ability better. So it's not saying this is bad, this is good. It's more, this is better for me and where I want to go next. And that's the type of aha moments that we want our students to have.
Well, and another thing too is when you work in a governmental organization, right? That hierarchy that is involved creates limitations that you have no control of, right? And if there, and I didn't know, I mean, I thought I had some ideas, and what I wanted to be and go do, but I really didn't know the answer. But I knew this. I knew I never wanted a roadblock in front of me that I didn't have the choice of being able to go and do something about that, right? To hurdle it, move it, change it, recreate it, whatever. And so I did. I dropped my papers in August of 2014, retired at the same time we graduated in December 14, and was completely broke by August 2016. But one of the things, though, is I was now equipped, like you said, with, hey, I went and I took another bet, and I bet wrong, right? But I now had a toolbox that I could reach into, and now, a little over 4 years later, the landscape looks a lot different for me, right? And as a matter of fact, it was funny. I was just I was talking about you this morning, James Peterson. Matter of fact, James is really coming up a lot in these podcasts. Everybody's going to have to, at some point, meet James.
Yeah, I saw him right before I came here.
So James is in the MBA program now, Marine veteran, works at Lockton. But we were sitting there talking this morning, and he was like, oh, I got this idea, and I got this idea, and this idea. And I was like, whoa. I said, let me help you out. Because I've been mentoring James for a while. I said, you're designed like me. You're an opportunity junkie. And he started laughing uncontrollably. He was just like, oh, that is the best definition I've heard of this yet. And he goes, well, what do you do? And I said, actually, I apply my new ideas with what I learned out of the program. And he says, well, what do you mean by that? And I said, well, I've got this planner that I use called Evo. And so I do my daily in it. And then every Monday I fill up the weekly in it. And I said, so if I get a good idea, because there's no good idea that you're going to miss not deploying it if you don't do it right now, right? Like, oh, this is a good idea. If we don't do this right now, it'll never work.
That's right.
So here it is. Call it the first week in the month, right? I get an idea. So I write it down in the book. So when I come around and on Monday mornings, I look at the previous week, what did I accomplish? What did I not accomplish? I'm like, oh, well, if that idea no longer seems like a good idea, then I wrote it down and be like, that's probably not going to be a good idea. But if I'm like, man, that's still kind of on my mind, I write it in the weekly part. When I come back the following week and it's still there and it still seems like a good idea, I go, okay, this is now I've had 2 weeks to let it wither away. But how good is this good idea? So then I take the idea and I run it through Porter's 5 forces that you learn in program. Barriers of entry, competition within other rivalries, bargaining power of suppliers, bargaining power of consumers, all the Porter's 5 forces stuff, right? And if it makes it through that, right? Because I'll at some point I make time during the week, then I go, okay, pass Porter's 5 forces. So when I get to that following Monday again, I'm like, okay, pass Porter's. I'm 3 weeks into this thing. Then I apply the 5 diamond strategy to it. What are the vehicles I'm going to need? All the stuff that goes into there.
Both from Suzanne's class.
I keep the charts. And if it passes that, then I go to my team and I go, here's the idea. Because what I was doing prior to doing that was I was wearing my team out. Right. Because good idea. And they were just getting exhausted. Now when I come to them, I go, this idea has been in my head for 4 weeks. I've even vetted it out. Here's why this has a better chance of working. And then my team became a lot more receptive to the idea. So I was telling James about that this morning. He goes, wow. And he goes, that's actually a really good idea. And I says, man, it's worth it, because if it's a really, truly a good idea right now, in 4 weeks, it's still going to be a good idea. But if it's not a good idea right now, how much time and energy will you waste because of that? So that was just one of the gajillion tools I learned out of the program that effectively changed the landscape of my life. If you would have told me when I dropped out of high school, when I was 17, that I'd be doing what I'm doing right now, I'd have looked at you and be like, what? No.
Right.
I was selling no real estate and having a podcast. Like, even nobody knew what a podcast was at that point, right?
Exactly. Right.
I wouldn't be having a successful nonprofit. You know, I wouldn't have a successful restaurant. I wouldn't have all that. Wouldn't have the friendships that I have.
Right.
And now it's completely different.
Right.
But I open to the change and welcoming to it. And that's really what for me personally, the program said, this is going to give you the tools that you don't have, that you know you need tools, but you don't even really know what they are. You're just like, I got a toolbox that doesn't have the right tools. And then going in the program and man, and you're going to get out of it what you put into it, right? You know, it's like anything in life.
Right.
If you're going through it and you're looking for a piece of paper to stamp that MBA, yeah. And I'm sure that happens in every class, right? Yeah.
At least initially.
Yeah.
I think, as you know, because you went through it, it's hard after the time in the program to just stay in that lane of, I'm just here to get a degree.
Yeah.
There will be at least one person that you connect with that makes you feel as though, okay, I'm getting more out of this than just that.
Yeah.
I think every person, every person gone through, have found at least one person. Now, in most cases, more than one. So therefore, I would say that you get. But then I think when you start getting the feedback from your people you work with and your family that, hey, you're changing, but they're not saying you're changing for the worse, you're changing for the better. When you get that type of feedback going, then all of a sudden you start saying, okay, this is more than just a degree, because that happens too.
Yeah.
But I'll be remiss as to if I don't talk about the source of where all this comes from. I would say our faculty and staff, the TCU as a whole, having a teacher-scholar model, has a focus on not only teaching first, and research is equally as important, but yet when you look at the MBA program, you have faculty that are equally adept of being experts in their field of research and study and teaching it as they are in facilitating the conversation in the room. Because you have a group of experienced people, someone in the room has done what we're talking about or is doing what is being taught. Having the confidence, having the humility to share the floor with that person or people to help the overall class is what our faculty have in common. It's not like an undergrad where you have one person on stage and they just talk the whole time and everybody takes feverish notes and they're the star of the show. Our faculty are stars, but they're stars because they have the humility and the the equal between humility and commitment. The commitment to making sure you get that return on investment and you get that learning experience. But the humility to say that if the thing that you got out that class to get the point that you was trying to get across didn't come from the front of the room and came from your classmate, they're okay with that.
Yeah. And
that in itself makes what you describe happen. Then from talking about my leader, Dr. Suzanne Carter, and also my teammate, Dr. Linda Lacoste, and all the other team members we've had over the years are being equally committed to the process. Providing a learning experience where all the student has to do is show up prepared. You come prepared, doesn't mean you know all the answers coming, but you're at least prepared enough to know what questions to ask. And as long as you do that, the books, materials, the online access, the food, all the classroom, the faculty, everything is going to be the parking pass, all that's taken care of. There's no standing in line or going online, having to register for your classes. There's no having to do all this other stuff like you had to do on your own in undergrad or what you have to do if you're in a different MBA program that is like for full-time MBAs at other institutions. That's taken care of. All you have to do is come prepared and be open. going back to what we talked about before, as long as you open to the fact that I may not know and it's okay, there's someone in the room that does, and therefore I'm okay with that day not being that person. But then there will be a day where I do know, and I'm just as equally okay with sharing the wealth and helping them get to where I am. And as long as you come prepared and you're open, then the 18 months go by real fast, and you look back and say, can we do that again?
And, and I tell people this all the time, knowing what I know now and the value I got out of the program, if I knew that when I started, I'd have been willing to pay double what I paid, which I know the education system loves hearing that. But we got people that would pay double. This is great. Now, if y'all go jump tuition to $200,000, there are going to be a lot of people mad at me right now, right? But no, that is, I mean, the value goes beyond a financial number of what I got out of there. Right. And that's the reason I've been so passionate about the program and being on the board and referring people to the program and just saying, look, talk to my man, Kevin. He'll give you the tour. He'll give you what you need to know. And if you really want to do a program that's going to make a difference in your life, not just in business, but as a human being, this is where you go. You go to TCU, right. Executive MBA program, and you talk to Kevin Davis, and he's going to hook you up. Right. And then at about 60 days into it, you're going to be like, I should have never listened to Jeremy Spann's podcast because I don't have a life, and I don't have a life anywhere right. in the forefront of what's in front of me, you know, but everybody experienced the same thing, right? Right. And guess what? When you go through it, there's been a lot of people that came before you, and they made it, and there's going to be a lot of people that come after you and made it.
That's right.
So, man, your journey, come from where you came from to where you're at now. Question I love to ask people is if you could go back and talk to 22-year-old self, knowing what you know in life. Now, I know that we could probably fill this notebook with all kinds of, hey, do this, don't do this, or well, as one of my guests said is, hey, on September 12th of 2006, don't go out. But if you could go back and talk to 22-year-old Kevin Davis and say, if just one thing, what would you go back and tell 22-year-old Kevin?
I would say don't be afraid of, embrace being only. I'll put it that way. And don't be afraid to be different. Those two things. Only is a part of my story. You know, how many black men has a spot next to his, next to his mouth? You know, I mean, I can't commit a crime because I'll be easily identified. So, but embrace being only. But also be not afraid to be different, because your uniqueness is what is also associated with your value. Yeah. Whether it be as an individual, whether it be as a business, or whether it be as a university, business school, whatever. So you have to embrace being different and understand the value associated with it. But in doing that, there will be times where you'll be the only one. But yet, if you're doing the right things, head down the right path, you won't be the only one forever. And because you'll find a different connection that will bring other people and attract them to you. So that's why I would say, I think in the education world or sector, that's what we're faced with. Because when someone says, okay, well, are you online or not? I say, well, everybody's online. And if you're not, no matter if there is a COVID-19 or not, we've gone too many months of doing it both. In our case, we have people in the classroom as well as people participating online. We have to be open to the fact that, okay, how do we make this work moving forward when there's not an excuse of, okay, we got health concerns and all that. No, it's more of, is this something that we can do? And if that's the case, then competition is not just DFW or Texas, it's national or global. So therefore you have to think differently. So that's why, but if we're the only ones who are comfortable with having just 30 students in the classroom, no matter where they are, and we still are the only ones that do things a certain way because it is what makes us unique and what makes it different. And as a group of people that see value in that, we should be comfortable with that. But at the same time, we have to be open to opportunity about what's the best way to do that. And that's what we're doing.
Man, well, sound advice. And again, thank you for being not just here and gifting us with your time for the listeners, but man, thanks for being one of my people that I can count on.
Thank you for being one of mine.
Man,
appreciate it.
Man, I tell you, I have the utmost admiration and respect for you, and I always value the words that you give me. even when you're telling me what man, that's not why I called you. And you're like, well, then you shouldn't have picked up the phone and dialed me. Here's the deal. And
but I haven't had to say that in a while, though.
No. Careful what you ask for. Well, so we got listeners out there that are interested in TCU's Executive MBA program. What do they do? Where do they go? How do they do this? What's the best way?
Our website is emba.tcu.edu. Just select Start the Conversation. There's a form there. Just provide your contact information, and I'll be in touch right away. Either myself or Catherine Baker, who will reach out to new prospects. But if you can do that, we also have preview webinars. We are off for the rest of the year. We just have one on Veterans Day. Again, thank you for your service.
Thank you for being worth it.
Thank you. And then our next preview webinar will be January 27th. Dr. Laura Mead will be talking about supply chains are everywhere, particularly when you're getting stuff delivered to your house. A
lot of truth in that one right now.
That's right. But yeah, I would say that's the best way to reach me. Of course, you can reach out to Jeremy. He knows where to find me as well.
Oh, yeah.
But definitely, if you're thinking about investing in yourself, building your network, expanding your business acumen, being comfortable with finding out what you don't know and putting it in action, then reach out to me. Yeah.
And for the listeners out there, as y'all hear me say it over and over, go to myexperiencedrealtor.com, click on podcasts. You'll see Kevin Davis on there. You'll click on him, and that'll give all the information about TCU and the Executive MBA program, the ability to download this. And for all of y'all that enjoyed it, and even if you didn't enjoy it, I don't care, because my man is coming back on here, because we've got other things that, I mean.
We didn't even get to the real estate.
We didn't even get to the real stuff. Look,
yeah.
I mean,
real estate. No, because one thing on that one, just to throw it out there.
Yeah.
What would happen if real estate firms merged with a technology company and an electronics retailer? No, what you learn about by association.
Mm-hmm.
Because when you think about it, it's not just about the building anymore. And also work has moved home. So how do you connect the commercial building to the home office? And what it all, because all these pieces that we're dealing with right now, it makes it, I mean, just to go from one call to the next, it takes time. That's easier than it was 10 years ago, of course. But yet, the lines have changed, because again, that's what about that openness. What we've defined as real estate before, does that need to change a little bit? How many rooms do you need now? Mm-hmm. It's not just about bedrooms. Now it's about offices.
Yeah.
It's about play spaces in addition. So I don't know. We have to get into that next time, because that's some exploration has to be done. And how we use our spaces and in order to accommodate what, again, whether it's COVID-19 or not, I don't think there's going to be a reverse to.
Or when COVID-20 comes. And everybody's like, what's COVID-20? I was like, well, we had 18, 17, 16, 14. We're in 19. 20's bound to come. Right. Well, and that's why, for the listeners out there, Kevin's going to be a repeat guest, because Kevin just has not just the experience at TCU, but much more other experience. And we got other great ideas to talk about. And I'm quite honestly, I can see you and I partnering up to do something together.
That'd be good
in the future.
That'd be good.
And I would love it, because I trust you.
I trust you.
Trust is huge, man. I mean, when you can really look at someone and say, I trust you, and you feel the goosebumps, because that's how much emotion is in it.
Right.
That's the truth, man. And man, because I trust you not only with doing the right direction, but also trust you telling me, no, Spann, that's a stupid idea, man. I'm not doing that. You're like, how much were you drinking when you came up with this one? So,
and then, again, I haven't had to say that in a while.
Right. I got better at that awareness.
Yeah, that's right.
So thanks for coming, man.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thank you. Good.
All right.